9:20, we'll call the Criminal Justice Public Safety Committee to order. First order of business is to approve the meeting minutes of prior committee meetings. Moved by Supervisor Garrity, seconded by Supervisor Wild. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. First up for today is the District Attorney's Office. Good morning.
When you take a look at our budget, the way it's broken out into three pieces, three parts. And if you look on your front page, they're numbered 1165, which says District Attorney, then 1168, which is Crime Victims Assistance, and lastly, Narcotics Control, which is the investigators. So just to break that out, the DA budget is our main budget where all of our staff and the attorneys work through. The Crime Victims Assistant is that grant-funded budget, almost complete grant-funded budget from the Office of Victim Services. That's what funds Manoa Afinito, Joy Savoy, and now Emily Wilson, who was added last year. And lastly, the Narcotics Control position. That's one position split by three individuals. So we basically are able to fill one position that way, and that's our investigators. Part of what you heard Bob Busey speak about just a moment ago, some of you heard, was that Leander's Law. Investigator Husky works pretty much every Monday working on our implementation of that Leander's Law. And so if we go to our first budget, that's that main one, the 1165, we were not able to represent a revenue which, after this was put together, came in. Our portion of that Leander's Law is $3,183. So right now it's reflected as zero. That's going to be added. The other revenues that you'll see the state DA salary. That's unchanged for this year, same as last year. Aid to prosecution is very similar to last year. Crimes against revenue prosecution. We have not received our final figure, so a decision was made to do a percentage of last year, also based on the way the grant's been used in the past. We're hoping that we're going to have eligibility to get beyond that 41,000, but that's why you're seeing what looks like a lower number. The timing of that, we're still awaiting our actual figure, and so we took last year's figure and we did 61% of last year's figure. The reasoning was we looked historically over the last 5 years, and historically the award versus the usage is about 61%. Some years were higher, obviously some lower. So we thought safest to just express it that way, and then if we have a need for more, we'll be able to access more monies than are being reflected here. Just require an amendment. Legislative Initiative Grant is $10,000 this year, and just so you understand how that one works, any monies that come in must be expended on the other side. So you'll see some expenditures as we go down. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I don't want to go line by line, but I would like to address that. If you go to 250 technical equipment, you'll see 9,000. That's going to be coming 9 from that 10,000 that's on the revenue side. We're going to show that expenditure, and then if you just go down to 410, you'll see our supplies went up by 1,000. Well, because we're adding 1,000 from that grant. What the monies are going to go to is to help law enforcement with some supplies, mostly data storage, and then some. And it'll also have the 9,000 go through actual physical equipment. So that's why you're seeing the changes there. Otherwise, what we attempted to do for the most part is maintain a neutral budget. There are a couple of changes. There is an increase in legal transcript fees, which is allotting a small portion so that we can, in those circumstances that we need to, hopefully assign a special prosecutor. Right now, the way it's currently being handled is we are covering all special prosecutions for other counties, and other counties are covering for us. That's become a very big, difficult problem, even getting other counties to come in because of their limited situations. So when a special prosecution case occurs, the way it works is we're called upon from Essex Hamilton, Saratoga. I've got a case in Fulton. Those cases don't come here. We go to the case and we prosecute the case wherever it is. In turn, those counties are doing the same for us. What I've learned is the other counties have separate budget lines where they're also trying to limit the number of cases, and so they're handling traffic and misdemeanors where they can with local special prosecutors who will handle those. So that's why you're seeing a slight increase. Well, it's not slight, it's a $10,000 change. And that would be line 440. We're hoping to be able to, at least with some of the traffic matters, some of the smallest things, get someone locally who can handle those, and it would come out of that budget. We're still going to handle, as we do, the vast majority of them, so this will just loosen that up a little.
Jason, do you think in the future you'll break out another line under the 400s for that?
We certainly could. Yeah, we could break it out separately. This was, I think through discussion, was suggested as a location for that. But I'd be happy to, it's fine if we did. So the vast majority of that's really our transcript fees for all our grand jury, all our trials, all our hearings. That's where you're seeing most of our expenditures coming out of that particular line. The only other, I would say, change stood out to me is where you see contract. There was none before, and you see $1,700. Our New York Prosecutors Training Institute gives us access to something called PCMS, which is a way to manage all of our files. It's a computer program. We've been using it for, say, 10 years at a minimum. Great program. They have seen such an increase in data storage because of body cameras, videotaped interviews, all the electronic 911 recordings. We're able to store those there, but now they're charging all the counties for storage. They gave, meaning NIPD gave us an estimate of our storage cost based on the number of cases we have, and that figure that you're seeing reflected there. That's probably the biggest change we've seen over the last few years, just the massive increase of data that we're getting and that we have to not only consume as prosecutors, but store and handle. I'm sure people saw an article in the paper this week about Tony Jordan over in Washington County addressing those concerns and those issues. It's kind of a radical change from when I started. You could have a homicide case and you'd have a 2-page statement. I could read that right here while I was waiting to go up, and now that could be a day of watching video recordings. So it's a really radical change. And of course, storing 2 pages of paper versus a videotaped interview is another issue. So that's the change that we're seeing there. Everything else, I think, is essentially a cost of living going towards the salaries, and I had made a request for the non-CSCA employees to also get the same cost of living increase. If you want me to keep going into the next budgets, I'm happy to, or if you want to address something here.
The jump in salaries under this one for this year, was that part of the adjustments we had to make in the beginning of the year for the A salary?
There's something that appears, let me take a look at my notes. It looked like there was an error. Are you in line 110?
So it would be...
Is that what you're at, the line 110, 873 to 921?
Yeah, I was looking on your first page of 100's personal services. That was up.
Right. Yeah, if you actually look at the amended budget, it was 915,748, and it's gone to 921.
Yep.
I'm assuming that's the cost of living expense that's built in. So it's about, what is that, about $6,000 less?
Yeah.
$6,100 difference.
But that amendment was what we had to do according to state, correct?
Yes, that was part of that. Right. If you'd like, I can go on to our next two.
Yes, please.
These are a little more simplistic. So the crime victim assistance budget's the next one. That's 1168. This is a budget that's OBS funded. So there is a small cost to the county, and it comes in 2 forms. Well, there's financial cost, which is small. The actual CARP grant, the way it works is there is a fee, 5% fee for the administration of the grant, which Minot Affinito from our office handles. So 95% of her salary and fringe is covered, but 5% cannot be. They also have a match, and the way we've handled match historically, and which we're going to do this year, is the county gets credit for the space that the program is using, and so that offsets. And then for internships, they set a rate for interns, and we've been able to make those numbers up till now. So if this goes as planned and we're able to repeat what we've done in the past, you'll see that the county gets essentially $211,000, and the cost is, go to the last page, $3,791 of actual cost. That is the crime victims assistance program that we have with Minnow, Apenito, Joyce, and White. And now, last year we were able to, because the grant had gone up, add Emily Wilson in a part-time position. As far as the way that we represent that grant, when you look at your numbers, is we basically back out the salaries, the fringe, and all the mandated expenses, and then we just spread the rest across our 400 codes. So where you might see an increase, it's just because we have that much. We may not be able to consume it all, we may not be spending all that, but that's the way we took the grant number, we paid all the salaries, all the fringe, and then the rest we spread amongst those. The way that grant works is we don't receive the money and then pay it back. It comes on a voucher system. The last grant, or the last, budget, is I call it the investigator's budget. The title is different, I think it's DA Narcotics, but that's our investigators. So it's Mike Husky, Russ Lale, and Tony Green. They split one position over the 5 days, and essentially that's remaining neutral other than that cost. You'll see a slight cost of living if they get the cost of living increase. Otherwise, it's unchanged. And that supports those, basically filling one position but 3 people. What I like about that is when we have coverage issues, they just swap between each other. So we're always covered because we have 3 for one position. If you only had one person doing that full time, when they're on vacation, there would be no one. When they're sick, there would be no one. So now we've kind of got that figured out and stuff like that. And those are the 3.
Any questions from the committee on the DA budgets? Well, hearing none. Jason, we thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for pulling this all together. And Paula, it's yours.
Oh, you're so soft. Joy is here, even though she's trouble. There's a line from Jason, how do you get those glasses to get in your forehead?
I know.
Joy is signed counsel.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I was being nice. Oh, this is a weird chair.
Thank you.
How are you this morning?
Good morning. Good. How are you?
Bright, shiny, nice, sunny day. In here it is.
Joy, did you have any handouts for the committee members?
Chrissy had the entire package. All right, I'll go show you.
Okay, thanks.
Because originally I wasn't going to be here, and she was going to pass everything out for me. You're welcome.
Yeah.
I think this is the longest you've sat down there.
It is.
You know, this is amazing.
It is. You be quiet, Brian.
What were they schooled over at? What were your friends?
There was all the other budget.
I walked part of history.
Yeah. Let's see, neither.
They're all salary.
Thank you, Tammy.
You're welcome. Morning, it's not happening.
Yeah, I hear you.
There you go.
This is just, nobody was...
For you.
They usually wait till Sunday for training.
Yeah, and Joy?
Yes.
Joy, I don't see it, your agenda listed on the website. Did you get your agenda requests in?
I believe so.
Okay.
It's not on the website?
No, it's not.
I'll double check when we're done.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Anytime we can do something else. You do prices. We're better than that. I don't know, I always like to do a little bit better.
I know.
We only did 79. Like I said, they were later coming.
Do all committee members have an agenda? Hello? Yes. Okay. Joy, please go
I have
ahead.
an agenda.
We have an agenda, but
Well, budget. Sorry. Yeah. The public, assigned council budget. Thank you.
The only major change is that we're running the grant through the budget this time, because it's easier to track it that way, and it was suggested by the county administrator that it be done that way. So you can
Okay.
see that listed in 3045 under the comment. And the initial, the 9386 is going to be for my part-timer, and
Okay.
those other
Go
two...
Can you start over? What grant was that?
Is it 752?
No. On your budget layout here,
Yes,
under contractuals, is it?
yes,
Okay.
under revenues, right there, the first line.
oh, I see the
55,
Right.
506.
Okay.
Yeah, correct.
Got it broken down, but
Yeah, it's broken down underneath so you can see, yeah, it is 752. I don't know if those are the last two distributions because those things confuse the heck out of me, but maybe Tammy can shed some light on it if there's more questions.
Yeah, what we did is we took a look at, these are the legal aid services. We use the Legal Aid Society, Joy uses the Legal Aid Society to do a good portion of hers. So we do get to recoup the salary, as she said, from her part-time employee. That's included in the budget. And then for these years, typically it's your Legal Aid Society contracts that we have with them. What we did is we decided to, as Joy said, run it through the budget this year. So what we'll see here in revenues, you're going to see in expenditures as well, as a wash.
Instead of booking them as they come in?
With these, we know what the dollar amounts are supposed to be. We do have grants as we're applying throughout the year, so those we would have to have a budget amendment if we were going to spend those. But for these, we know what the dollar, we think we know what the dollar amounts are, I should say.
True. So that's why under contracts, you see a bump there?
Yes.
Okay.
Any questions about the contracts, 470? It's all there. Real loss center we addressed last year, it's a 2-year contract. Not a whole lot of changes.
do you think you're going to hit your number on the legal and transcript fees for 2018?
Easily.
Are you going to hold it?
Easily. Hoping not to go over, but you never know what you're going to get. Because they all do it last minute.
Right, to answer that, yeah, we did take a look at the general ledger, and what you see is they're holding their vouchers. We'll get those, as Joy said, the last minute. Usually there's a very large booking in December of every year.
Well, the 750 is all transcripts, or is that transcripts and legal?
I can't.
For your legal and transcript fees, there, 750,000?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're looking at a 50,000 increase?
Approximately.
Yeah.
And that's just a CYA move, so to make sure I don't have to come back up and beg for money.
And again, that's covering the transcripts, or is there other legal like the DA was talking about?
No, that's strictly for my vendors
Okay.
and transcripts.
Okay.
And the rural law center's covered all appeals, and the other contract is for coverage for family court by the Legal Aid Society.
Any questions from the committee?
No, the only question I had, how is, raise the age going to affect you too?
At this point, it's unknown. I think it's going to be a minimal effect, since we haven't really had...
Started today.
Yeah, it started today, but we really haven't had any exposure to it, so it's like, we have to wait and see what's going to happen. Really not sure how it's going to work.
It's like it's going across the board like that.
Yeah, nobody really knows. There's a lot of information out there, but not a lot of stats because it's brand new, so we don't really know what to expect.
There's no other questions? Thank you, Joy.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you.
Oh my God, we have public defender next.
Okay, we're going to start with the easy thing. Apparently, I had previously requested a additional Assistant Public Defender position number 8. You all have approved it. It's in my budget, except I forgot to get a resolution so that we can approve the contract. It's fully funded by Indigent Legal Services. The contract has come in, and we can't have it signed unless you approve it.
Okay.
I'll move it.
Okay. Well, moved by Supervisor Simpson, second by Supervisor Wild. Any further discussion?
Thank you very much.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. The next thing is the budget. We have a lot of grants. We have a total of 7 grants that are in the budget, and that's all in there. So that's fully funded documentation we have in the budget. I don't really have a lot to tell you. I am requesting the 2% cost of living across the board for my people, and I respectfully request that we could get that. In addition, I am requesting some salary increases, which is the last piece of paper in the packet. Previously, I've come to you and talked to you about the pay disparity between my office and the DA's office and how I've lost people going to Washington County. So my creative solution is if you give me these pay increases, I can get the rest out of Indigent Legal Services because they are supplementing, not supplanting. And so if you do these, because these people do family court, the issue becomes if somebody touches family court files, they can keep track of how many cases we do, what type of case it is, as part of this data that we'll be having to send in. So I am asking for $17,000 for my people who touch family court files, and the rest I would take out of Indigent Legal Services, which is more. So that's the shortest version of the way I can put that.
And per our procedure, those salaries are figured out at the very end of things?
Right, it's not in here.
Yep.
It is not in here, not in the budget. It is a request I am making. And obviously it will go on further from there. And I'm just explaining why I'm requesting
That's right.
it and how I can do it so that I don't lose people and get the salaries more on a par. It will not get them on par, but it will make it a little better, and I appreciate it.
And I
that's why I'm
think you've
explaining.
provided those comparisons
Yes,
in
I previously had
previous
sent that to
meetings.
everybody
Yes.
in other budget meetings. If you want anything again, I'll send you anything else you want again. Try not to kill more trees.
Supervisor Bramer.
Well, we have the DA's listing from their budget meeting earlier this morning. I'm wondering, is the $5,000 for each of those three, the 2nd, 4th, 7th, do you think that's enough?
At this point, I'm trying to work with the new 5-year plan that Oils is putting into effect. It started on April 1st of this year. We don't have a contract. I haven't submitted a proposal on it because I need to see what's happening on this, because of the percentage of how things are. In the future, there may be things that I could do as part of the 5-year plan for the Oils grant that I may be able to work around, but this will get me at least so I feel I won't be losing people.
Supervisor Bramer.
Just on that, as far as losing people, the 6th assistant PD is paid $48,000.
Mm-hmm.
What are you hoping to get for that person through the other grant?
The 6th Assistant Public Defender is a fully funded grant position, and so I have in other grants put in cost of living, because you can't give that person a cost of living because the county doesn't pay a penny for that person. So
Okay.
as I'm working off of multiple grants, I have cost of livings in other grants.
Okay,
It's the only way to do it.
you're dealing with that separately, okay.
Yes, I am.
Thank you, Jim.
Any other questions for the public defender from the committee?
I've tried to keep it so it's not an increase other than that. Everything else is a grant.
Thank you, Marcy.
Thank you very much.
Probation.
Morning.
Morning. Supervisor McGowan.
I would just like to go on record that my wife works for the probation department, so I will be reviewing but abstaining.
Thank you for making that note. They're going to say you were on.
Pardon?
You were on.
Good morning.
Morning.
Reading from my agenda before I get into the budget, I do have one motion. We have, what I'm looking to do is to fill a probation officer position. September 27th, Lisa Moynihan retired from our department. That's the fourth retirement this year and the last. So what I'm looking to do is to fill that position. She has a domestic violence caseload, also supervises some cases out of Glens Falls, and does pre-sentence investigation. So, necessary component of what we do.
Motion to bring that to the floor. Supervisor Sokol, second by Supervisor Driscoll. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries.
Getting into our budget for 2019, we have three budgets. The first one's probation budget, next one's pretrial, and the next one's day reporting. The bulk of what we do is in the probation department budget, and if you look at it, the majority of things have not changed significantly. What we've done, and we'll talk about raise the age as it starts today, and I can talk a little bit about the financial documents and the plan we submitted to the state. But the only significant change in our budget has to do with raise the age. Based on the numbers given to us in our analyzation of what we think will happen, for 2019, we requested an additional probation assistant and an additional probation officer trainee. That's the position we have. And as we've known, the state has indicated that this isn't going to cost the county any money. It's going to be 100% reimbursed. We'll see how that plays out at the end of the day. But the sum and substance to my conversation is, if you look in the revenue line, we added a raise the age revenue line, and there's $164,000 in that. $124,000 would be for the two positions, including fringe, and the other $40,000 would be for programs. Speaking with Ryan, I understand that we're only going to fill what they give us for revenue, but we put that in as a cost-neutral basis to look at the budget to say, here's the revenue, we're going to add two positions. If we don't get the revenue, we'll add what that adds up to.
Are the two positions reflected there in the 110?
They're not reflected in the 110 at this point.
But the revenue is?
The revenue is reflected in the revenue code, yes. But it's not in the 110, as that's something that I believe is done through the budget process.
Okay.
But anyways, we won't find out until what we're going to get for revenue. Hopefully it'll be towards the end of this year, this calendar year. The state operates on a different fiscal year than we operate. So we're not going to find that information out for a little bit. And I think, with Raise the Age, we'll see what it does, what it brings in, what the numbers are, how it affects our department. And if the numbers justify adding positions, that's something I certainly, obviously, will bring to the committee, talk to Ryan, and we go through those processes before anything's done.
Okay, Supervisor Wiles.
Sure, thanks. And this is more of a question about what if. I'm assuming we're adding full-time employees. What if the state decides the next year or 2 years that they're going to reduce the funding or eliminate the funding. Now we're on the hook for full-time employees.
I think that's, with the state of New York, that is certainly a possibility. I think nothing's guaranteed with them. They've indicated it would be 100% reimbursable. We'll see how long that goes for. They have a 5-year fiscal plan. I think a lot of people think at the end of that 5-year fiscal plan that the counties may be on the hook. But I think that's something we have to take year to year. I think it's something we have to see what the numbers come in. You know, maybe it's something that our department can handle. Maybe the numbers won't be that great. Maybe it's something we can handle within the infrastructure of what we do. And if that's the case, then I wouldn't be looking to add anything. But you're right. That's a possibility that 2-3 years down the line, they're like, well, we can only do 80% of this or whatever, and that is something, you know, potentially we will have to face. There'll be decisions made in terms of what the numbers are, how we manage cases. But I think by that time comes, we'll have a better idea of what we're dealing with and how we can handle it.
So just a follow-up, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman. Do we have an ability to absorb them in 2 or 3 or 5 years through attrition or some other way?
In our department? In terms of
another department, or you know, whether you'll have maybe some forthcoming retirements and the like that might help us get back to where the budget is now?
I don't think we're going to have any retirements per se. We've had half the department retire in the last 2 years. Not to say that people potentially could leave and go to other opportunities, but I think when those things happen, we certainly review what we have going on and go from there. So there's the possibility, you know, certainly that we could look at that.
All right, thank you.
Supervisor Bramer?
Thanks. Are we being asked today to create new positions, or is this just to put the revenue into the budget?
As I understand, it's just putting the revenue into the budget. We are not creating those positions today.
I think as we speak today, we're not creating positions right now, but I think as we get into 2019, we would have the position in place with the revenue, and if we needed to access those positions for 2019, we would have them as a part of the budget structure, and then we could bring it to the committee and to the board if need be. So positions we would look to add, we would have revenue to back it up. And say they only give us $100,000. Say they give us less than we requested per position. You know, then for 2, we would do 1. We would request 1. We would only fill what they give us revenue for. But I think if we have the revenue in place going into 19 and we have the positions in place, then I think in terms of how the county budget is set up, I think that's an easier way to do it than try to add as we get into 19.
So shouldn't we be adding this in the expense line for the personnel? Someone is doing that? If we're saying we're creating the...
Right.
Who's paying attention to all of the new positions we're creating? Like other one, you know?
Yep, the way it happens during budget process is there's a personnel worksheet that we're working on that we prepare for the budget officer that we take into consideration. It's first time through the process. Correct me if I'm not correct, Mr. Thomas, please. That'll be on the personnel list of requests by departments, because what the departments have been told is you get the position budgeting list that comes right off of our New World system, and those are the numbers you have to use. So any changes that we have to do will have to be done through the budget process through approval by the board. So that's where we're maintaining a copy. The positions from here that we're adding, the positions that other departments have requested, go in that personnel.
So all throughout, any time that we're adding new positions into the budget, we are creating the new positions.
We will, if it gets through the entire process, the positions, yes, will be created, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Without a separate resolution going through for individual positions.
We would have.
I think there has to be an individual resolution, but I think that we do that as part of the package.
Part of the budget.
Okay.
Part of the...
Right.
Okay. It's in that list, the gigantic list of personnel. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And I won't say I'm hopeful.
I'm
but
sorry, that doesn't necessarily deal with
no,
just
no,
you.
I'm sorry. No, and I will say that hopefully we will know what we're dealing with in terms of revenue by the state as we get later into the year, and hopefully by the time the budget is, you know, up for adoption. But, you know, I'm not sure how fast the state will work in terms of approving and letting the comments know. I'm just happy that I can submit my application to them without sending it back because I didn't fill out, I left the zero out of an Excel spreadsheet. So that's where we are in terms of doing this right now. So they haven't even looked at the numbers in terms of what it means. They're just gathering the applications and making sure they're filled out the way they want them filled out. And we've gotten through that process.
Supervisor Wild?
Mr. Chairman, thanks. Just one other, just brief comment. I get a little concerned when we talk about adding positions based on the state aid versus what our actual need is. So as we go forward, I hope we're just basing that on our need versus the amount of money that the state gives us.
Certainly. I think that I'm not looking to add people I don't need to add. And we will present the numbers that we have and have them up for review before we do anything. So,
Supervisor Driscoll?
Thank you. I've seen in some of the other departmental budgets that they've utilized part-time employees. Has probation ever used part-time employees, or is that something that could be utilized depending on the uncertainty of the...
We've used them in the past. We haven't used them recently. Sometimes it's hard to find people that want to work part-time, particularly in this line of work. But if the revenue indicated that's all we had, then we would look to do those kinds of things. We do have active civil service lists. We would access them. Most people may not be interested in them. We could advertise. But it's hard to find part-time people. Most people that we look to come into our department want to make a career. They want to have benefits. But not to say that it's a possibility.
Supervisor Sokol, did you have?
I did not, Mr. Chairman.
Just have one more. On the stop DWI fines, I see that from this year we don't have any revenue. Is it just a lag?
That's the one Jason was talking about with the ignition interlock. We received notification that we were approved funding after we submitted this, but that's been added to the budget. So it's like $3,000.
Now this is the revenue line of $26,250.
For the DWI fines as opposed to the
It says DWI fines, yes, stop DWI fines.
Welcome, Supervisor Hogan.
Sorry. Line 2613.
Oh, that's from Stop DWI. That's the money we get from the Stop DWI. Patty Miller, the Stop DWI program, that probably has not been generated yet.
Okay.
It's in there, but she may not put those in until the end of the year.
Okay. Have an extra packet. Here, she can have mine.
No, it's right here. She asked me.
Rob, under the 470s, the increase there is for the 40,000 for Raise the Age?
Yes, as part of Raise the Age, not only personnel was requested for different type of programs that we would look to do was also requested. So with our application, we put in a multitude of, not a multitude, but we put in some programs that we thought would benefit our population. And to do that, we would contract with outside agencies that would provide that service. We put in 40,000, that's a low figure. Again, not knowing what the state is going to give us, we will only use what they give us. So if they give us nothing, then all we did was raise the age and we accomplished nothing with our kids. So hopefully, I'm sure they will give us something, but what we requested and what they approved will be, I don't know what that answer will be, but we'll use only what they give us.
Supervisor Sokol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bob, on your salary schedule, there's a Samantha Lane. She's
there twice. Yeah. What that is we are in the process of filling senior probation officer positions through promotions and those kind of things. So I believe once we are fully hired and we hire all of our staff, that will be a clean sheet that will have everybody we have on it. It's just a work in progress right now. But we wanted to make sure we had the positions funded.
And you provided a list in here for the guidance instructions with numbers of what you expect for the Raise the Age and how many people would be going through there and things like that, correct?
Correct. There's two other budgets as a part of that. They're kind of small. I'm not sure if anybody has any questions on them first.
Let's touch on them here.
Part of what we also have is a day reporting budget. Basically, there's just personnel in there, and there's really not much to it. There may be $1,000 for drug testing supplies, and then we have a pretrial release budget that the only thing is in there is one personnel. So they're very small budgets. Pretrial release, we received $13,000 in revenue. That's been consistent through the years. But the bulk of our probation revenue comes in a block grant of $205,000 that's contained in the main probation budget. Again, those are very small budgets. Most of our work is contained in the probation budget. And I did attach probation guidance portion of, those were the questions we were asked to justify adding positions. Why would we add positions? We had to justify it. And then as you read through it, it talks about the programming we requested specifically for our departments. But getting into the Raise the Age financial plan and the probation guidance, we had to do the probation guidance document only for costs contained to the probation department. But across the county, Raise the Age affects certainly more than the probation department. So for probation, we looked at, as we talked about, the 2 additional personnel. We looked at programming. Department of Social Services looked at another caseworker. We included that. The county attorney's offices will be affected. Looked at another assistant county attorney. And the sheriff's department will have transportation costs. So I reached out to all those departments, and we came up with figures, and we included that in the main part of the Raise the Age document that went to the state, encompassing, as far as we know, what the cost will be. The interesting thing about the Raise the Age document, it's a work in progress, and we've been told that we can submit additions to the budget should we find things are costing us more. We could take out less if they're costing us less. So it's a work in progress because there's a lot of unknown factors. People really don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to walk in the door. We don't know what it's going to cost us. We don't know how it's going to affect us across county agencies. But if we do see increased costs beyond what we put in the document, we can amend that and send that in. So it's a work in progress, and it's something that's just not static. We're going to update if we need it.
And you included Girls Circle in there?
We did. We included funding for Girls Circles. It's one of the restorative programs we want to do. We've been doing it now with one of our probation supervisors and another individual, but we're going to look to have her trained as a facilitator.
And this is the first year of it, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, how's that going?
Going well. The groups have been well. I think for the young ladies that have been involved, I think it's been beneficial to them. And it's an opportunity for us with Raise the Age, not only with Girls Circles, but to get other types of programs into our county that we really couldn't afford to do previously, that hopefully we can basically change the way we do the juvenile justice system as opposed to the traditional aspect that we do. So I look at this as an opportunity if we get the funding. If we don't get the funding, and we've done nothing. So just Raise the Age. So take a look. If you have any questions down the road on Raise the Age, let me know. I'll be happy to answer it. Like I said, it's something that affects more than the probation department.
Supervisor Bramer.
Thanks. I do hope that you'll come back to us with how it's going, because I don't want it to just be that we the state have raised the age and we haven't done anything as a county if we don't get state funding. I mean, we're going to have to figure out how to pay for this stuff.
No doubt.
Stuff being how to manage those older children and what to do with them.
True.
I mean, if we don't get the state funding, we still have to comply with the law.
We do.
And we shouldn't do nothing.
Correct.
So hopefully we get the state money and that's not an issue, but just make sure you're coming back to us.
I'm sure that we will get something from them. And yes, it's important, not only for the children that are part of this, the 16 and 17-year-olds next year, but the younger kids, 14 and 15-year-olds that are coming up. If we forget about them, then we're going to have problems on the back end. So it affects everything. So
Supervisor Weil.
Everybody appraised.
Mr. Chairman, thanks. I'm encouraged that you're looking at how we might change the juvenile justice system, and I encourage you to pursue that. And if you need some money to make it happen because we don't get it from the state, I would support some kind of plan of yours to do something different, because in the long run, it will save us money.
Mm-hmm.
So
definitely.
There's a little challenge for next year, for the other goals, right?
Absolutely. And I will keep the committee apprised of how it goes and what kind of funding we get, because that's important. And the state should be held accountable too, because they've passed this initiative. They did it in a complex way that didn't need to be this complex. It could have been a lot easier. And the other part of it was the original legislation had a 2-year implementation phase. It knocked it down to 1. So the state, there's no infrastructure. The state has provided no infrastructure and basically left the counties out on their own to deal with a lot of things. So I will be back.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Robert. Next up is Sheriff's Office.
Later crowd, but it was
Folders.
I just don't up to her, you know.
Part of our paperwork reduction.
But I think it was, I haven't really heard the reports.
I'm glad you didn't send it out to the books
Nice weather.
Yeah. Do what we can to first, there's a lot of that going.
It's actually thicker than Ryan
That's the
Moore.
problem, everybody's trying to get their last cash in.
Good report.
Good report.
That was my stuff. Me and my husband used it.
Maybe 3.
Thank you.
Since this agenda was put together, I have an updated one. So I tacked on one last item.
Can you get a copy?
Sorry, I was expecting another 30 pages.
No, not another thing.
Oh, hey, sorry.
I'm in the absorption phase. I'm absorbing everything that's in front of me.
It's a lot to absorb. Just write that one.
Oh,
I don't know. There's one more. That's the extra stuff. The update.
True.
I don't know.
What do I want to look at?
Managed.
Oh, managed?
Okay, everybody has a copy?
I think he's missing the
Yeah,
new updated.
and Sean, the addition is G, amend the budget from your original.
Correct.
Go right ahead.
On our action agenda, item A is request a resolution for a new contract with the LA Group to conduct engineering work at the Stony Creek Radio Tower site. Specifically, what they're doing is performing what's called a view shed analysis, because the site is located within the Adirondack Park. We're required to do certain things by the Adirondack Park Agency. In this case, they actually send balloons up to different heights, and they look to see where those balloons are visible from.
Supervisor Bramer, you moving that?
Chair, I'll move that. I have a question.
Okay, is there a second? Second by Supervisor Wild. Question, Supervisor Bramer?
Thank you. Okay, I do thank you very much for all the backup material in all of these. I really appreciated being able to go through that ahead of time. I guess my question is, did you put out some sort of bid, like just a informal or whatever it's called, to get written bids back?
We got-
Because I saw
we got-
Chazen and CS.
Correct. We spoke with the purchasing agent. She told us we needed to get quotes from
That's
people.
it. Okay,
Right.
all right. And LA Group was the one that was the
Yeah.
lowest cost?
They were.
Or- Okay.
They were.
Oh, wow.
And just to follow up on that, Supervisor Brammer, we had used Chazen in the past for the
Okay.
Warrensburg Tower, but they were not the lowest this time.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a big price range in there. So.
Mhm.
Good. Any other questions on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay.
I don't think we should have to do this.
Okay.
I think it's ridiculous to do this for the APA. Both balloons in here. I'm opposed to it.
Opposed to comment? Okay.
I said, I don't think we should have to do this because it's an APA requirement. I don't think they should have any input on emergency communications.
Or they should pay for it.
I agree
with
I don't think anybody should pay for it.
That's why I said, I just shook my head when I'm like, this is
Supervisor
ridiculous.
Bramer?
Yeah, have
Supervisor-
we been exempt in others?
No.
No, we
I
never.
just think it's ridiculous.
Supervisor Simpson?
Public safety, nobody should have to pay for this.
No.
It should just be a given, because they're gonna do it anyway.
I voted no.
Motion carries. Yeah, Supervisor McGowan.
Yeah, is this something we can approach APA on? Is that a state rule that we can adopt?
Something we've been working on, but it's gonna be a long process.
You know, those are issues for the AATV and for the review board to work on via voice. And we have that representation at the table here, so go forward. Yeah, Sean.
Not that it counteracts what you're stating, but the state is paying for this work to be done. It's all funded through grants. I don't know if that makes it more palatable.
Still not- that's still-
There are reimbursement. Still doesn't change what I said. We shouldn't have to do this for public safety. Enough is enough.
B?
Request a resolution for new contracts with Capital Digitronics to install emergency equipment on the sheriff's office vehicle. Specifically, we've had a number of items that we've been unable to get installed on one of our emergency response team vehicles. We are going to transfer the money to pay for that out of the asset forfeiture account. We had gotten three prices. They range from $7,500 down to $4,500. $4,500.
And these are for lights and speakers and...
Emergency lights, equipment, stuff like that, scene lighting.
Okay, moved by Supervisor Sokol. Is that your hand up there? And then Supervisor McGowan on a second. Any further discussion? Supervisor Wild?
Thank you, Sean. We haven't had this on that vehicle before. Is this a brand new vehicle, or is this just extra money in the budget that we can take advantage of?
This is, it's not extra money at all. It's using asset forfeiture money, and a lot of the equipment that we have that's been sitting, unfortunately sitting on a shelf for this vehicle was funded by a grant. It was already paid for. The equipment's here. We don't have to go out and buy hardly anything.
Now, Sean, you have a fellow in the shop that also does some of this work. Is that
We
correct?
do. We have a gentleman by the name of Joe Dupre, and he does the upfitting on our vehicles. The average savings by having Joe do that to a vehicle is about $4,000 per car, because it's not only an upfitting to the new car, it's the uninstalled equipment on the old car. And unfortunately, because we've been short-staffed for over a year in our maintenance department, he has not been able to do anything with this equipment.
Gotcha. Good. Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries.
Item C is a resolution request for transfer of funds.
Motion to bring that to the table here. Supervisor Simpson, second by Supervisor McGowan. Looks like the big tickets are the overtime.
It continues to be an issue.
Supervisor Bramer?
That was my comment. Thank you.
Supervisor Wild?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How are we doing in terms of attracting full-time employees? I know we have some openings.
The Corrections Administration fills those positions as quickly as they can. Obviously, you get a list of eligibles from civil service. They interview them. They have to give them a psychological exam. Got to make sure that they're the right person for the job. And as soon as they can fill them, they can. The other avenue that we've recently ramped up hiring on is the number of part-time correction officers. Where that becomes very important to us is if we can use part-timers to do transports. That will alleviate some overtime downstairs. And we're trying to recruit people at this point in time.
So how much of the overtime is really related to lack of staff?
The vast majority, well, I should say the vast majority, a lot of it, but you got to remember, and I talked about this over a year ago, is the unfunded state mandates, the one-on-one watches that we have to maintain.
Right.
Somebody, is coming off of alcohol or benzos or opioids.
Supervisor Driscoll, then Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you. Very same question as my friend Mr. Wild had, so.
Okay. Supervisor Bramer.
Thanks. I mentioned, having been at NISAC last week, and we talked about the funding for jail-based substance abuse treatment, but it turns out Warren County didn't get any of that money this year, so I'm just trying to, I'd like to talk with you offline about some creative ways that we can work on that, and maybe it will help reduce costs for those, some of those things.
Okay. No other questions on the motion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries.
Item D is request for resolution to amend the budget to reflect revenue from the Department of Homeland Security Emergency Services. 2017 PSAP is called Public Safety Answering Point Operations Grant. I'm wondering why it says 17. The state is always a year behind with these grants.
I'll make the motion.
Moved by Supervisor Garrity, second by Supervisor Wild. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries.
Item E is request for resolution to amend the budget to reflect revenue from the North Warren School District as part of the School Resource Officer Program.
Moved by Supervisor Wild, second by Supervisor Garrity. Discussion. There. Yes, Supervisor Bramer.
Thanks. I was just going to bring up the point again about the equipment and that kind of thing, but this is for the first year we are sort of waiving that.
Correct. As discussed in, I don't know how many committee meetings ago, when we first started talking about, there are costs that exceed the reimbursement rate of $30,000 per position. Liability insurance, the cost to get them their uniforms and other equipment. We agreed to, I guess the best term is, we're going to eat those additional costs this year, and we're going to eat them out of our budget. And we were told that if we needed additional money to help pay for it, to come back to the committee and ask for it. At this point, we're covering those costs out of our existing codes.
For our 2018 budget. This is out of 2018 budget, so
Yeah, but
even though it's for 2018-19 school
and
year.
that's the issue. The school year, I should say, the school's budget goes from 2018 to June 2019. We budgeted, we have already incurred the expenses as of now because we had to obviously equip the officers to be in the schools. So I don't see, other than salary and the fringe, I don't see any additional costs going into 2019 for the group that we've hired.
And come,
Go ahead.
Supervisor Hogan. No, you may be the same questions.
No, you go ahead. It doesn't dovetail on this, so.
Oh, okay. So because there is an overlap on fiscal years, perhaps there is some way that within the 2019 budget year and new contracts, we may be able to amend and recoup some expenses.
All the existing contracts that we have now run till basically the end of this current school year. There is no provision to extend any of the contracts because we wanted to build all these additional costs into the new contracts to make sure that we were covering all of our costs on our end.
Supervisor Hogan.
Two questions. Are the schools aware, have they been made aware that, the terms will be different next year?
They've been told that, yes.
And I know we've talked about it, but are these full-time positions or part-time positions?
They are part-time retired police officers that are currently certified, that are working in the schools.
And the schools get to determine the number of hours and...
They working through me to determine, what their needs are.
So do we
Right,
have...
right, and the best way I can explain it right now, the school year is 180 days. If you took 180 times 8 hours a day, I know exactly what that comes out to, and then there's the fringe cost on top of that. And that's basically what they're covering. If they have a special event, they have a dance or a football game that they need somebody at, they'll flex that officer's hours, they'll let me know to make sure that we have coverage at that game or whatever that event might be. We're not exceeding that 40 hours per week per position. And that's basically what we're holding them at right now. We have a position in North Warren School District where either officer wanted to work 5 days a week, which is fine. So I've got 2 officers splitting a 5-day week up there, and it works out very well.
Supervisor Wild? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sean, since we're on the topic, I was wondering if you can give us maybe a 30-second overview of any kind of challenges, successes, public input regarding this that you or your team have received.
The overwhelming response from the school districts has been very positive. They've been welcomed. Each and every officer has been welcomed into the school system. They're building those contacts, those connections with the staff and students, which we deem just as important as providing safety and security in the school. There's already been requests for the officers to start pushing into some of the classrooms, providing some drug awareness training and some anti-bullying training, so we see that as a positive as well. The only challenges that we've had is some of the school districts use a radio system that's not compatible with the radios that we give to our officers. So in those instances, they have to carry 2 portables, one for the school district, so if there's something going on within the building or on the campus, and one that gets back to our headquarters.
We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next.
Item F is requesting a resolution to amend the current contract we have with correctional medical care. And basically, we're looking to amend the contract to reflect what we want to do is to eliminate using a psychiatrist and start using a psychiatric nurse practitioner. They've had a great deal of difficulty getting psychiatrists to be able to, one, come into the facility. And what we did, I want to say about a month and a half ago, we in fact put Wi-Fi into the facility so they could do telepsych services. So that a psychiatrist sitting maybe in another correctional facility could do like a secure Skype session, I don't know how to better explain it, with the inmates in the facility. But they thought that we would have better reliability if we used a psychiatric nurse practitioner. There's also a savings that goes along with that, as you don't pay the same amount to that person, and it's $100 an hour cheaper to use the psychiatric nurse practitioner.
And this was something you had discussed several months ago, isn't it? About the...
We discussed it, and in the contract for 2019, that is what we plan on doing. There's a significant savings to the county by doing that.
Motion to bring it to the floor. Supervisor McGowan, second by Supervisor Bramer.
This is a little, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, please.
Thanks. This is a little bit not related to this exact contract amendment, but since you mentioned the 2019 contract, what is the dollar amount for this contract? Isn't it enormous?
It's not really enormous. And I'd rather talk about that when we get to the budget process, because there's a lot of detail
Okay.
that I'd like to bring up about that.
Okay, yeah, this is not related to this particular amendment. Thanks.
Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm going to have to recuse, I think, but I'm not sure that my husband works for this company.
Oh, okay, with one abstention.
That's like 5 jobs.
Very good. Next one?
Item G is request a resolution to amend the budget to reflect revenue from the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Services for the 2018 State Law Enforcement Terrorism Prevention Program grant. It's money we receive every year, and this year it's $19,994.
Okay. Moved by Supervisor Sokol, second by Supervisor Simpson. Any further discussion on these? And is this, So for your equipment, is this for specialized equipment?
It is for specialized equipment. It has to be on what they call the authorized equipment list. It's put out by the federal government. In this case, it's providing ballistic helmets for emergency response teams to replace ones that are beyond their 5-year recommended use date. It's buying night vision equipment for the Glens Falls Police Department, who has attached 3 members to our agency. Then the remainder of the money is buying first aid, trauma kits, and medical supplies for the agency.
Any questions? Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries.
Under topics for discussion, we have 3 different budgets at the Sheriff's Office. For this, I'm going to throw my cheaters in. It becomes sensitive. The first budget I want to discuss is the Sheriff's 911 Center, our communication center. If you were to run the numbers as compared to the adopted budget in 2018, the budget's down $59,000, or it's down 2.64%. If you were to compare the adopted budget, the amended budget to our 2019 request, it's down 3.68%. We feel the amended budget is a truer reflection of what our actual operating costs are. There's a couple notable things. One, 2019 is the last year that Warren County gets reimbursed by the City of Glens Falls for the dispatch consolidation. It was an 8-year agreement. Next year is the 8th and final year of that agreement. We have seen our wireless surcharges increase, but we're seeing our landline surcharges go down as more and more people transition away from the traditional landline to cellular devices. The other things that we'd be asking for in 2019, but I want to bring it to the committee's attention, and I know I discussed this earlier in the year, we're looking at a phone upgrade to the Nec Phone System, which is all the phones within our office. That upgrade alone is $30,000. We're using PSAP grant money to pay for that, so that's a cost that isn't being passed along to the taxpayers in Warren County. We also have to upgrade our recording system. The recording system was put in the fall of 2012. We were advised this year that it was due for an upgrade, refresh, I believe is the term they used. That some of the equipment needed to be upgraded because of the age of it. That cost is going to be around $45,000 to $50,000. We're still working out some of the costs. Again, we're going to use grant money to pay for that, so it's not something that's being put in next year's budget.
So those are not reflected in this budget?
They're not reflected in the budget, but I wanted the committee to be aware if we have other means to leverage other monies to pay for stuff now, whether it's grant money or monies that we may have left over in budgets this year. We always try and do that first. Any questions about the communications?
Yeah, Supervisor Bramer, Supervisor Driscoll.
I see in your note that you're taking out the IM responding software and HyperReach.
Correct.
Is that?
So the IM responding software, which was kind of a hot button topic earlier, a couple of meetings ago, that was money that was put into our budget. That's been removed and it's been put under OES. So now that money is reflected in their budget.
Okay.
We were using a company called HyperReach, and that's where we do the mass notifications, and we can circle geographic areas. Supervisor Hogan is where we used it up in Johnsburg, late winter. We found a product called New York Alert. It's maintained by a third-party vendor, so it's better than if the state was maintaining it, so to speak. The cost for that is nothing, and we have found that it works very well. So we were paying around $13,600 a year for the HyperReach, and we've eliminated that as well.
And we moved on that a month or two ago, didn't we? Was there something already in our agendas where we dealt with the HyperReach in New York Alert?
I don't specifically recall if there was, but there's no cost to the county to use New York Alert.
Supervisor Driscoll?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Sean. I was just curious, when we purchase equipment or a system from a vendor, it needs an upgrade, or whatever you want to call it. Is the same company that we purchased the equipment from that we're using for the upgrade, or can we kind of bid that out if it's a kind of a something that others could do?
I guess the best way I can explain it, let's talk about the Nec Phone System. That system that was put into our office was funded through a consolidation grant that was put together by Mr. Bartholomew from Glens Falls. The cost of that system, I believe, is around $112,000. To go out and replace the entire system as is, I imagine it's going to be a lot more than the original $112,000 that we paid for it. So in this case, it is a sole source system. By what I mean is, I can't just have anybody come in and work on that system. I looked at some workarounds and I found out that it wasn't going to be possible. I couldn't get an outside vendor to work on it. One of the problems that we were running into is the system we have now, they will not sustain after the end of this year. It's reached what they call end of life. And they would continue to maintain it for possibly one more year, but that was about it. And we had to do something. And we have the grant money available now. We figured let's make good use of it now.
Supervisor Wild and Supervisor Garrity.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sean, this alert system, we're going from a fee service provided by the state to some third party that's free. Do we know anything about this third party? Because it seems like this is there's a certain amount of cost to build this and maintain this.
I believe the state's paying for everything.
Well, so the state's paying for it.
It's New York Alert, but it's maintained by a vendor. I think pretty sure the name of the vendor is called Everbridge.
Right.
They've actually sent people up to our office to assist OES and our agency with training.
But the state is actually funding it, so it's not some third party.
No, there's...
might end up finding that they give up after a while. Okay, I'm all set. Thank you.
Supervisor Garrity?
There's no plans to co-locate anything else on the tower that we're putting up in Stony Creek to improve the cell service in Stony Creek, is there?
I had spoken with First Light. First Light is very much in the know as they run fiber to most of the cell towers around the state. And they had talked to the different cell providers, and it's a cost issue that right now there's nobody looking to co-locate a cell tower into Stony Creek. And the other thing that it would change dramatically, the scope of the tower that we'd be putting up. It'd have to be substantially more rugged than what we're putting up, just to support that type of equipment.
Supervisor Wild?
No, sorry, all set.
Okay.
But wouldn't that make sense?
If we could do it, absolutely.
I mean, to me, that would make common sense, right? But we'll do it.
How do I, and I had the same conversation with First Light, how do we entice somebody to come up and put a cell tower where there's a year-round population of, right, 800 people?
But they deserve the same as a metropolitan person.
I don't disagree.
I'm just thinking, so we can't co-locate any cell service on this tower after it's built.
You could, but I don't know what the structural ramifications would be. I do know that when we looked at co-locating equipment before, that they would typically look for towers that are at least 100 feet. This is a 60-foot tower. So now if you're going up from a 60-foot tower to a 100-foot tower and you're building...
Pop a couple of balloons on the way up and then they won't see them. I just think, I've heard it since 2016, how we're going to have broadband and all this stuff. It's very frustrating because, we can build $16 million welcome centers, which I think are It's a nice welcome center. But we cannot give the people of our county the same, everybody have the same advantage, and the kids have the same advantage. We skip over that, and you know, and then, of course, we have to kowtow to the stormtroopers up there in Wrightbrook, too. So, I just don't understand it.
Thank you. Sean, 2 questions. The fiber that's being installed, does it have enough capacity for a cell tower in that location?
I can't specifically ask. We looked at several different options, and what we decided to go with, because it was, I would say, the cheapest, was to go with T1 lines. The problem is, when you look at running fiber up there, we got to get somebody to lay that fiber. They got to figure out where they're going to start from and how they're going to get it there. There was other options, and those didn't work out for us as well. We can do what are called microwave shops, where a microwave dish sees another microwave dish, put the dishes up on either Gore or Prospect Mountain. Don't have a shot at that area.
So the second follow-up is, how much more would it be to build that tower up to the 100 foot if we could do that?
I think the cost of the tower is going to at least double.
So how much? Is it going to be 10,000 versus 20,000?
No, I think it's the tower itself could get upwards of $60,000-$70,000, if not more. We got, when we did the Warrensburg Tower, we were required to go out and get bids for it. And the bids, it was a wide, Supervisor Gary remembers this, there was a wide range of bids. We ended up putting the tower up for around $10,000. I think the highest bid I saw was around $140 to have a vendor come in and do it. So there's a wide range of prices that come in.
Yes, if you don't mind, I'm just going to think out loud, but we've had a little bit of a windfall in our tax this year. Is this something that could be an infrastructure play for us going forward? Say, take some money to do some infrastructure work. Just a thought. To me, I agree with Supervisor Garrett that it's an opportunity that we should be thinking about the future if we can find a way to cover it.
My concern is, you know, we're going to do this, and we studied it for communications, and then, you know, it just won't be, you know, we're missing an opportunity over there in one of our rural communities to make it better for everybody, you know, and that's my only thing, you know. Common sense should overtake some of these things on occasion, but, you know, I understand your hands are tied. You're trying to to improve the communications, emergency communications. It just, you know, I've heard it since 2016, and it's frustrating for me to sit through these things and not.
Well, I can sit here and tell you I've gone to the FirstNet meetings, which is a nationwide initiative, and Ryan, you sat through the meetings with me. It's probably going to help out areas, not going to do much to help out people that live in Warren County. When I went to a meeting, AT&T as a contractor, they talked about putting up, I think, 10 towers in all the Adirondacks. So I don't think 10 towers would paint in all the dead areas that we have self-provider-wise in one county. It's not something, and the one thing that's very important to know is they made it very well known during this meeting that this broadband initiative is not meant to replace land mobile radios.
Supervisor Bramer, Supervisor Wild, Supervisor Simpson.
Well, bouncing off of Supervisor Wild, I mean, if we were to invest in the infrastructure and just put up the cellular antennas.
A stronger tower.
Yeah. No, not a higher tower. I'm talking about on the tower we're building. Can we put the infrastructure on a cell antenna and then see if AT&T or whoever would come and use it? I mean, is that even a possibility? Are they just not willing to?
I would have to, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head, I believe we would have to have contact with the cell providers to find out what their minimum requirements are, what type of height they'd be looking for, what type of tower they'd be requesting. And then maybe we could answer some of the questions what the costs are. We've already started forward with the process. We've got grant money to pay for what we've already spec'd out. We're already moving through the APA with it. So I guess if the committee wants us to do something different than what we've done, you know, give me some direction, because we need to make some changes, right?
No, my suggestion is not to change the design, because obviously that's going to set the whole thing back, but to see if anyone would use the tower as it is, if we just put a cell antenna on it. Antenna, you know what I'm talking about, the infrastructure. If we make the investment,
And as Brian just mentioned to me and reminded me, they won't do anything without fiber. There is no fiber up there.
Isn't Slick supposed to be coming in there to run fiber, Frank?
Yeah, on the Lawrenceburg.
Yeah, I read something. I mean, we really need to lobby the state to
why
help
can't
us.
we just do it?
I don't know, I'm not a
Well,
techie.
And I realize some of the people that sit here today weren't on the committee at the time, but we did pursue grant money through the Development Authority of the, I think it's called the North Country.
Right.
And
That portion, right?
And we had fiber run to the Warrensburg site. We had fiber run to the Warrensburg station, and fiber went someplace else, maybe down to our office. And fiber went to the Luzerne site. And what we worked out with them is it was funded for the first 3 years by the grant, and then our costs could be as much as $700 per site. Sounds like a lot, but the reality is that's not a lot. Yeah.
I'm just trying to help
Supervisor
the town of
Simpson.
Stony Creek. That's all I want to do is do what's right by the town of Stony Creek for a change. You know, and try to help the people.
If the committee deems prudent, I'll make some phone calls today and find out what the options are. The other thing is, it's almost like if you build it, they will come. There's no guarantee.
Supervisor Wild, Supervisor Simpson.
Sean, if I'm not mistaken, the cell companies typically pay a lease for using towers also, so there could be some revenue if we do this right.
$1,200 a month.
How much?
$1,200.
It costs us $20,000.
Their normal fee right now to co-locate is $1,200 a month.
Their fee or what they pay?
What they pay. What they would pay us.
And we actually looked at a tower up in near the Glen, and they wanted $4,000 a month for us to co-locate. And to put things in perspective, we negotiated a contract with Verizon for $149. We're paying $500 for the entire year.
Right. So, but there might be an opportunity, so I'd like to propose that we
I
kind of
think we
pursue
ought to
this a
allow
little
him
bit.
to at least make some calls.
Okay, now, remember, we're in budget presentation here on this. There's Supervisor Simpson.
I just want to say, we really need federal and state agencies on this, because the fact of the matter is the cell coverage, there isn't enough people to support that, requirement there, so it needs federal intervention, which is what we're trying, we've been advocating for with AT&T and the state, and until we can get them all speaking in the same room, it's not.
But Matthew, I still think
Supervisor
I would.
Hogan.
Go ahead and finish.
Well, I'm just saying, we need somebody to support it.
At the
and we're not
end,
gonna
you'll
support it.
bring this back up so we can get a motion to let him do this. That's all I'm saying.
It seems like we need a more comprehensive look at the whole county, and, well, then let's dig it out and look at it again. Because going after one tower here, one tower there is a little bit inefficient to me.
Are we talking about cell service or radio service?
Well, just the whole thing, if we're going to put out proposal for cell to jump onto tower, this isn't the way to do it.
And I don't know if it's through the sheriff's office as the responsible party for doing that. Supervisor Thomas?
We had this discussion a year and a half ago. I just assumed that protection. Cell towers. Sheriff's over there occasionally, over there a lot.
Yeah, one step at a time. First things first. Yeah. Supervisor Garrity? You want to put a motion in front of the
I'll make a motion that we pursue, just let him make some phone calls and see how much upgrade he would need to the tower if we did put cell, but not stop the process of putting up the emergency communication tower.
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
It's no big deal. Any other questions about the communications budget? Moving right along.
Yes.
One of the things that is the nature of this discussion, you might want to talk to the LA group about what additional costs, if any, to just the test. I assume it's a visual test, and maybe a communications.
No, it's just that literally they put different color balloons up at different heights, so I imagine we have to put the longer string now.
But it's that test. Just so we have it.
Okay.
Lot line, and, yeah, you mentioned that, the communications, budget expenses are much less than last year's,
Correct.
3.8%. Okay.
Try and curb stuff wherever we can.
Okay. 3110.
3110, the adopted budget for 2018 versus what our request is for 2019, it's up $51,000 and change, or the equivalent of 0.4%. If you look at the 2018 amended versus what we're requesting for 19, it's actually down $414,000, down 3.38%. And again, the amended is actually a truer reflection of what our operating costs are, what we have going on.
And that's in the equipment?
Across the board. One of the things we do with all the budgets is this is something that's not created in the course of a couple days. It generally takes weeks and weeks of intensive effort. As you see, there's all the backup of what we do and what we provide to the county. We run 5-year graphs. We look at different ways we can save money anytime we can.
What are some of the sheriff fees?
Sheriff fees, those are monies that we receive through our civil division. And they serve papers, they mark wages, evictions, summonses, all the things that the civil division does.
You're being conservative this year on that?
Yeah, we've noticed the numbers have gone down a little bit. The last thing we want to do is overestimate our revenues, because we realize that puts the county in a bad position at the end of the day if they don't come in. Under 260, departmental request, we're purchasing, I'd like to purchase optics for the patrol rifles that are issued within our agency. Replace a live scan system. The live scan system is when somebody gets arrested, is what they get fingerprinted and photographed on. Unfortunately, these devices are incredibly expensive for what they are. $20,000. We have one in Chestertown, which actually went down for a while, about a month ago. We have one in arrest processing in our station. We have one down in jail as well. And speaking with our computer people, they told me we should replace one of them. Now, there were other items that we requested that we're covering this year, and I'll just touch on what those are. We've had a problem with heating and cooling in our medical unit down in the correctional facility for some time. We're going to leverage money that we have now. It's about $6,000 that we're not going to put in next year's budget. We have to replace the cooling out in our maintenance bay. It's about $5,000. We have to buy salt for the radio towers. And never heard of this before I got into this job. They actually salt the ground around the radio towers because of the grounding rods. Apparently gives a better connection.
Increases the conductivity.
That. What he said.
Supervisor Bramer?
Thanks. I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, that's
okay. I just noticed on 442 that the gas and oil seems high, the budget request versus what the actual was in 2017.
442?
Can we reduce that at all? And are you using any hybrid cars?
We have no hybrid vehicles. The gas and oil, unfortunately, the price of gas is like a floating target. It goes up, it goes down. We talked extensively about it in our budget meeting, and we put it at where we think it'll cover us at the end of the day. I know some of the bills that we get for fuel, and it's like Dennis here, some of those lag behind.
Yeah, I saw this year was only 106, but I figured that's,
Some of the
we're only in
that's
September.
Then the billing that we get from DEC, because we fuel our boats up at Green Island, that lags way behind.
All right. Thought that might be a place we could shave a little off.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Showing back on 3110, just quickly explain the
In the what?
Why the equipment down so much? Those are probably grant-funded equipment, and that's why you see that going down.
That would have, the point is that doesn't necessarily reflect the price, but the revenue would also go on.
Typically, it's a wash at the end of the day. You have a revenue that's directly covering that cost.
And also, I think on this year, on the amended, on the auto equipment, we purchased early, did we? Some new patrol cars?
What we did this year is we had budgeted to purchase 8 cars. 4 of those cars were going to be mostly funded by DASNY. They would give us $100,000. I think the actual cost of the car was like, cars were $107 to get the money to make up the difference. Because the contract lagged behind in the approval process with the state, we moved forward to get that done sooner than later, because the cutoff date to order the cars that we have forever was September 10th, because we're not manufacturing the Ford Tauruses any longer. And we did get that order in time. So the other items that we're paying for this year are new windscreens for our impound lot, which is where we put vehicles that we seize, other stuff that we seize, evidence, a couple $1,000 in other equipment. Our fleet budget, all vehicles for the sheriff's office come out of the law enforcement budget, so whether it's a corrections vehicle or a maintenance vehicle, everything comes out of one pot of money, if you will. And our fleet budget is actually down a couple $1,000 from what our request was in 2018.
What line is your fleet?
It doesn't ever show on here.
Okay. You only have 6,000 down for automotive.
Correct. They take that out and they move money after the first year. It's from, Frank, you could explain where the money comes from? So for 2019, under our law enforcement budget, we were replacing 7 marked police sedans. One of the things that I had to look at is the availability of what's out there for police vehicles. I know Supervisor Bramer brought up the use of hybrid vehicles. Ford actually came out with a hybrid version of the Fusion. The problem is Ford is eliminating the Fusions, the Tauruses, and one of the smaller cars. I forget which the other smaller car was. So we had to look at what vehicles we were going to get starting next year. There's the Chevrolet Tahoes, which we deemed as way too expensive, and they're just not a good fit for our agency. They're too big. We looked at Ford Explorers, which we already have 3 of them, and we looked at the Dodge Chargers. It was a significant jump price-wise per vehicle. We would go from a Taurus up to an Explorer. It was over $5,000 per vehicle. It doesn't sound like a lot, but when you start buying 7 vehicles, well, now you just paid for a vehicle. We viewed the most cost-effective plan was to go to the Dodge Chargers, which are still an all-wheel drive vehicle, which is what all our patrol cars are. And and those cars move up in cost to over $2,000 per vehicle over what we're presently paying. Also in the budget is to replace a correction sedan with another van. The car that currently has 163,000 miles on it, and we're going to replace a F-250 pickup truck. It's one of our maintenance trucks, the one that we replaced 2 years ago, and the one this replaces is a 2005 that's beyond its end of life. We actually put a new pickup body or a new bed on it 2 years ago because the other one was literally falling off and was rotted out. So we extended the life of that by 2 years.
Vice Wild?
Mr. Chairman, thanks. Sean, and maybe it's Frank, is probably the better question, but in 2018, we have in the automotive equipment reserve, 230.1, almost $200,000. Is that money that we're taking out of your budget and putting into the reserve? Is that what we're doing? Or is that the status of the reserve itself? So we'll have no reserve next year.
Replenish it every year.
That's a whole nother line item, isn't it?
It gets funded every year, yes, as part of the 5-year vehicle reserve.
And who's...
So it's in here somewhere,
Or is that a
I can't see it.
It's a vehicle reserve fund that the county has established.
It's a standalone fund,
Okay.
so it's not under the...
Okay.
Yep. Similar to the way computer reserves, we also do computer reserves that way. We have a computer reserve fund.
So what's the status of our motor reserve for next year? We'll talk about it later.
This year we have
That's the agreement.
Any other questions under the 3110s? Continue on.
Okay, the third and last budget is corrections. Corrections budget is up substantially, and I'm going to outline 3 reasons why. Before we do anything with this budget, you'll note that the personnel services and the benefits pushed the budget up over $207,000 before we did anything. That's things we don't have control over. It's basically more than a third of the increase that you see for that budget. The other reason the budget's increasing is the fact that we have a medical provider now that works under a staffing matrix. The staffing matrix plan is based on an average daily count of between 90 and 100 inmates a day. As you're aware, our inmate count has been well north of that. At times we were up in the 170s this past summer. I think we're back down. I haven't spoken to the administration today. We're back in the 140, 150 now. So just keep in mind, the amount of medical staff that we have to tend to these inmates has remained the same. And the sheriff felt, as did our health supervisor, administrator downstairs, that we need to increase the staffing to better accommodate and work within the constraints of what we have to do for the inmates. Although we're not required to, we went out and got pricing this year from 3 different medical providers. I know there's been questions, are we getting the best value? And we wanted to make sure that we were doing our due diligence. So we put out this changed matrix, and basically it has 3.6 positions for the medical providers. We then went to 3 different providers. We went to the current provider, which is Correctional Medical Care, and they have some other names because the company got broken up a few years ago. They came in the lowest. I think the price is actually reflected in there under the contract.
$1,700,000.
Okay. We looked at I got a bid from another company, and I know at the day of the budget committee meeting, I told the committee then that we hadn't received the full price from them because they had not provided us what the dental cost would be on top of what they already provided. So they're going to be about $1.85 million, and the third provider was $2.38 million. So we think we are best to stay with the company that we've been utilizing. One, they're very responsive to our needs. If we have a problem with somebody that works downstairs, they're very responsive to the sheriff. And we have a good working relationship with them now.
Vice Bramer?
Thanks. 1.85, 2.38, and what was CMS?
Correctional medical care is 1.75.
Yeah.
Some of the things that we've done in the new contract, and this is another reason the cost is up, we don't have electronic patient records now. Everything's done on paper. So we're moving to electronic medical records, which has been a recommendation to do. There's a difference between vendors, whether it's proprietary and now they own your records, or whether you actually hold the records if they were to leave. So the software that Correctional Medical Care provides is not proprietary, and we own the records at the end of the day. We were also offered the option to host those records on our own servers. So I sat down with Mike Colton, the head of county IT, and I said, Mike, can we do this? Because if we can do this, we can save $7,200 a year right here. He says, absolutely, we can do this. So we did that. We negotiated further with them because they wanted to charge us $5,000 for telepsych. And my view is the telepsych is a benefit to them, not necessarily a benefit to us. The $5,000 went away. We're not paying for the equipment. And the last item that was a cost savings to us, again, amendment now, psychiatric nurse practitioner, but starting January 1 of next year, it is a psychiatric nurse practitioner. It was a significant savings by not using a psychiatrist.
Vice Bramer?
Thank you for that explanation. I'm really glad that you went out for the bids because I had looked at this, earlier in the summer, and it looked like we hadn't gone out for an RFP since like 2005 or something. Really, really long time using the same people is a concern of mine that we don't, continually refresh and try to get the best price possible.
Absolutely. We need, we're very cognizant of the fact that these are taxpayer monies. I'm a taxpayer. I don't like to see my taxes go up. And, we want to make sure we're getting the best deal we possibly can out there.
Can you tell me who the other two were? Actually, I'll just ask you all.
Chairman?
Sean, and there's a large increase in the 400 line. You can see it there. Moving over to 2018 as amended.
One of the reasons, and I didn't touch on this, that we underestimated our contract cost for this year by about $70,000 compared with last year's budget. About $70,000. It didn't show this year. That's being reflected.
Just one quick, Tammy, we went to electronic medical records in the public health.
We did about 10 years ago.
Yeah, they can't use the same program?
It's not designed for,
Not
it would be, that was, the product that we use, that is used in health services is really designed for home care. So it is different.
Different, okay.
Yeah.
Like
Home away from home.
Any other questions then on the corrections budget?
Did we ever go back to Hudson Headwaters and ask them to bid on the service again? I know we left them, about 3 or 4 years ago, 5 years ago?
I believe it was 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
We're in year 2 of a new contract.
Yeah. We used to use
Is that the same thing that correctional medical said?
Yes. We used to use Hudson Headwaters, and then we made a switch because there was a trend in a lot of the jails were using this company, and we went away from Hudson Headwaters. There were some care issues, and they were raising the cost. So then we went to this other company. I didn't know.
We did not reach out to them.
They may not want to get back into it.
I do know that when we originally went to correctional medical care, Hudson Headwaters Headwaters had no interest in doing
Yeah.
around-the-clock staffing.
Right, they didn't want to do the 24/7.
Okay, just
Supervisor Bramer.
I guess, I'd like to know too, are there any, state, you know how you can like jump on the state contracts, piggyback on state
Yes.
contracts?
Very
Are
familiar.
these people one of those?
no.
Vetted by the state?
They're a vendor.
They're just a vendor we use.
Correct. They're in different facilities throughout New York State.
Did you ask our purchasing person to try to see if there was any other competitive pricing
I didn't
through the state
specifically ask her about that.
bidding options? Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, we have to do it. I know we have to do it, but
No.
There's, I
it's a
mean,
big ticket item.
It has nothing to do with our budget, but I'll just mention this. I know, Claudia has mentioned her concerns about what we do for inmates. We're currently working with Warren Washington Mental Health to create what's called a bridging coordinator or re-entry coordinator. We know that inmates are substantially at risk for overdosing. When they get out of the facility, they go back to trying to do the same amount of drugs that they were doing before, and they're 40 times more likely to overdose within a few weeks of getting out of jail. So they're seeking grant money, and I think they're going to get the money. But this is somebody that will deal with the inmates as they're getting out for drug issues and for mental health issues, because usually the two and two go together. And I was a panelist up at the Adirondack Health Institute last week up in Lake Placid. I know there's a lot of different initiatives that they're talking about doing as well.
That bridging?
Correct.
When will that start, if they get it?
I don't have a date. I would think it's probably around the first of the year.
Right. Chairman?
How many companies responded to the bid on that?
The sheriff went back to the three different vendors as far as I know. Is that anybody else?
The three responses?
Yes.
One other comment? Okay.
I just want to, on that, like, I don't think that they have to go out for an RFP for medical services, but it's certainly way over our policy of going out for an with an RFP and a formal RFP for $20,000. This is almost $2 million. It just seems like something we should have been very careful vetting, so I appreciate that you did go out for the quote, or the sheriff did. Just, if there's any other small savings we could have squeezed out, it would make a big difference since that's such a big number.
We issued the food costs have gone up as well.
Right. Yeah.
We have to beat them.
We do.
They might complain if we don't.
Yeah. If we could only have more people
We'll get
behaving
lots of
more
lawsuits
of the
if
time.
we do.
I think that's what we need to get down to.
Sean, question on this. How many staff do they have to support this full-time staff?
Does the medical presider?
Yes.
I'd have to have the staffing matrix right in front of me. I can't answer that question without seeing the matrix.
The reason why I'm asking is just curious whether it would be worthwhile for us to hire our own.
Well, I can tell you that when we were with Hudson Headwaters, things were kind of parceled out into different areas. We were using somebody who did mental health. We had dentists. We were paying for ambulance service.
Okay.
And I know that when we originally made the switch from Hudson Headwaters, and I believe it was 5 years ago, there was a significant cost savings by going to correctional medical care. And there was also a reduction in overtime because we had staff here that could clear people to get them off these one-on-one watches sooner. That helped bring our overtime down. There were less transports going down to the hospital because more stuff could be tended to here at the facility.
Just to follow up, I'm just curious if it would make sense, if this is a mandated task, that maybe we can hire one staff and shorten up the contract we have with CMS. I'm just trying to think out of the box a little bit. Is there a way for us to reduce some of our costs by having someone, like you just mentioned, someone to clear the watches?
We have that now. They're all their employees. They pay their benefits. They're insuring them. So I don't know that necessarily how that would even work.
Sure.
Yeah, I seem to remember the conversation back when we made the change for very specialized service they provide here for special populations, special needs of all types, and concerns of all types. The reason I asked the question and I responded, I just wanted to make sure that there was some level of competition, some level of competitiveness, assuming all services are comparable, there's some level of competition. So I would assume the other two were north of the Swan.
Yeah, one was 1.85, the other was 2.38 million.
Supervisor Garrity?
Just an observation, you know, I mean, we added 13 staff. We were hoping to reduce our overtime. With the way the system is, our overtime isn't going down. Some of it's caused by less staffing, but a lot of it's caused by what you told us a couple months ago. The watches and the things were required, and I just wondered, is there any way to avoid any of that? I mean, I know it's mandated, but is the people who mandate, do they offer any solutions to some of our overtime costs?
They provide guidance.
You guys have conversations about this.
They send us written guidance as to what we're required to do, and obviously if we have a question in regards to what they tell us to do or what they send along to us, and we pick up the phone and call them. But they're also the people that will investigate us if we don't do what we're supposed to do, or if an inmate makes a grievance that we didn't do something we're supposed to do.
That's great.
I can say from NISAC, the other counties have the same problem as we do with the extra cost of the one-on-one watches. It's not just us, but I think some of the other counties are getting this funding for jail-based substance abuse treatment, which can help reduce the need for the one-on-one because these people are getting the health treatment that they need for that type of problem, and we aren't getting any of that money. It's like that Washington County thing with the people getting that they got money for the attorneys at the first arraignment.
Yeah,
but we're supposed to comply with it, and we don't get any money. Like,
Okay.
we still have the problem, and we're not getting any money.
Supervisor Hogan?
Would the jail-based substance abuse program also eliminate some of the need for transports, or no? Is that
No.
some of it? No.
And I know there's a concern about the mental health care. The best way I can explain it is that jail is not the place to be if you're trying to get mental health care. It's not the best setting. You're not going to get the most intense treatment.
Sean, a quick question on the watches. Right now, we staff them with our corrections officers. Do we need to staff it with corrections officers, or can we use social workers that might be less, or contract people that might be less?
I don't foresee how you could do it with anybody other than a correction officer, because there's certain things that we're mandated to be. I certainly want to put a custodian sitting outside the cell watching somebody, and next thing you know, they have to go into the cell because the inmate's doing something.
Okay.
Good. Thank you, Sean, for the budget. Thank you, Jen.
So that was easy.
That was very good.
Thank you.
Awesome report.
Stretch.
Yeah,
Claudia,
take a little stretch here.
Did you get your email?
Okay.
So, I was out of the office for 3 days because I was up in Lake Placid, but no, I want to try and do something.
Yeah. I could do it at no cost to the sheriff's budget.
Seventh inning.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. Did you go to the one guy?
We're getting there, Mr. Lansing.
Oh.
We're getting
Actually, he
there.
was giving the presentation. He said they have a...
Yeah, but what I was saying is how
So I was like, wow.
Don't blame you.
It's a whole tree that pod, but,
in some place like
maybe
Stony
this,
Creek
maybe...
or... That's what we're trying to work out. They need a subsidy because they're...
Great job. Absolutely. Okay. We have Chairman Conover making our quorum here. It's just momentary. Folks will be back here in a minute. Charles, thank you for waiting.
Oh, no problem. This should be easy after Sean's. We have very few, a minor increase. You'll notice right on page 1 that essentially all the increase that we have for this year is in the 800s line.
Did I not get one?
We are able to overcome
I didn't get one.
salary increases by some adjustments in contracts and some other minor, a very minor adjustment in increase in revenues. So I think a total of like $6,000 for increase, but again, all that's coming out of the employee benefits line. Just a couple of things I'd like to note. When you get to, on page 2, part-time salaries, we've had substantial savings in the part-time salary line, and that's going to continue. Mr. Pagano's last day was on Friday, so we're going to have quite a bit of money left over in that line to get at the end of the year, so some pretty substantial savings.
And you're able to maintain your level of inspections?
So far we've been able to, yes.
Supervisor Bramer?
Can we reduce that budget request then?
Well, going forward, and at the end, the next line item is going to be the intent to fill that position.
So just savings for this year?
It is savings for this year.
But that's a revenue generator, what he does, right?
That's correct. That's correct. And then the other big change was in on line 470, which was in contracts. That was a contract between our department and the planning department for services for Marty Fitzgerald. He retired last year. His hours are being reduced both in planning and for us. So we've had a $9,000 decrease in contracts in that line. So those are the really big changes.
Is that related to this thing, this 2019 MOU?
Yes.
Okay. So can you just explain what is going on with this?
Well, that has been there for about 5 years, and unfortunately I wasn't the administrator then, but I believe when the county was in a little bit harder times, they were looking to work departments together for some savings.
Okay.
Planning had some extra time that they could allow Marty to work for us, so he was trained as a code enforcement officer, and we've kind of shared his services for the last 3 or 4 years. They've paid for part of his salary, we've paid for the other part of his salary. Last year he retired. He's only working part-time for them and less part-time for us now, so that's kind of what that whole contract was about.
But he's going out, let's just say him, he's been going out and doing inspections in these particular communities for their places of assembly and like apartment buildings?
Apartment buildings, pretty much any business, yep.
Okay. Why isn't he doing that for the whole county?
Well,
Like Queensbury and Glens Falls are not on this list.
They
have their own code enforcement office.
Yeah. Good. Charles on...
No, I know that, guys. I know that, obviously, but if we have someone out there already who's specifically doing those inspections...
We don't have jurisdiction in the town of Queensbury or the city of Glens Falls. Our only jurisdiction is all the other communities that are
Pursuant to this MOU?
Correct. For the contract?
Well, then we can amend this.
What do you...
Charles, if you want to explain on, or Supervisor Thomas, did you...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So,
Nothing.
Charles, in your office, towns have agreements with your office to conduct these...
With the county, correct. All the individual towns have opted out of the state codes and have opted for the county to enforce them in their towns.
Which relieves the towns, the smaller towns, of having to retain a qualified code enforcement officer for the inspector.
So are the towns paying the county planning department to do it?
No, but the county planning does charge, correct? Do you have permit fees?
Planning department?
I mean,
Or
sorry.
code, sorry, code.
Code.
You don't charge the person that you're inspecting?
Yes, all as individual applicants for building permits,
Uh-huh.
and the owners of businesses for service for doing fire safety inspections.
For the places of assembly and that kind of thing?
Correct. And that was all established by the board when they put the positions in place.
Yes, the fee schedule that we charge for the inspections, it covers a lot of the cost of the inspector.
Shouldn't it cover all of it? I'm sorry.
Well, it may, I don't know if it
But
does.
isn't there a permitting fee that you gotta get a permit fee, and then, you know, and that includes the...
Yes, which I found out was
Inspections.
$50 for a little porch I put on, and I brought it to Charlie, and he said, well, you're the reason for it.
Well, that's cheaper than Queensbury. I had to pay $90 for a deck.
Supervisor Simpson?
We understand that the private businesses pay, but municipalities aren't, like, you know, for...
No, I'm understanding that now.
Okay.
Yeah. But what if there's a public place of assembly
We pay
that's
for a
owned by...
permit for building.
By a municipality?
There's no cost, there's
There's
no
no
charge
cost.
for the permit fee.
Okay.
Again, under the board, that was done, how long ago, Kevin?
Well, it was
5
done,
or 6 years
this
ago?
was done when the fire codes were put in 1984. That's when this whole thing, I think it was 1984, when the state changed all this. And they left an option back in 1984 whether the towns wanted to hire their own fire codes people or the county did it. And everybody opted for the county to do it. And it's been that way, and I think, except for the city, because they already had people, and the town of Queensbury has a elaborate building codes department.
Yeah, they do.
That does it. So that's where this came from, and then over time, we've raised, then we got way behind on fire inspections. So we went to hiring part-time people and charging, and then we were getting caught up on fire inspections, but I think we're pretty much caught up. Not just fire inspections, his department was beyond, not his. He was working there, but he wasn't in charge. His department, we would have a lot of problems with building codes in prior years until we got the right number of inspectors. And now, I don't think we have a problem with getting plans reviewed and plans out there, inspectors doing the inspection. I don't think we've had a single problem with a new building person in a long time. So the system works, Claudia, but that's the way it was set up, I believe. And Marty was just a make work for, you know, he was retiring, he wanted to keep his hand in it. And I think at one time, the grants that the planning department was doing, you know, we had a cut back in 09, so their grants were cut back, and that's why we had the extra time and we were able to train people. So I know that's a long-winded answer, but that's where we were. That's why we are where we are.
Well, I appreciate that, the history. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. As I see this, your overall budget is costing county taxpayers $300,000 a year.
Correct.
If I read that correctly.
Well,
So basically, we look at the town of Queensbury that has its own building and codes, the city of Glens Falls, its own building and codes, are supplementing the rest of the county by their taxes to pay for this. And what I'd like to see is that the fees get increased to make this a zero net sum. Because what we're doing is, we're providing this service to the outlying towns at a fee that is much less than what it's costing us. Correct.
that is correct.
This is a
As far as
service.
who is paying and putting the bill for that, that's above and beyond me, but that is...
And
does
I'm
cost
not
me.
sure how the revenue falls down between Queensbury, Glens Falls, and the rest of the county, but I think that, just a change of tack. When's the last time the fees have been adjusted, the fee structure?
About 3 years ago.
And what was that increase, do you recall?
About 3 cents a square foot per building, and then...
Percentage-wise, maybe?
Yeah, per square foot, 3 cents per square foot.
No, I'm talking about percentage. So you're adding 3 cents, but what was it prior?
Well, I can go back to...
Just a guess.
I'm going to say about 30,000.
Percentage. Percent.
2%
2%. Yeah, probably, around 2%.
Would it be unrealistic to say maybe we need to increase that by 10%?
I guess that would be determined by the board, and I think it would be unrealistic.
Time it's a question, is it time that we need to look at that fee schedule to say maybe some more revenue needs to come into this? And I'm sure all the supervisors that are outside of Queensbury and Glens Falls have a little heartburn over this, but I'm just curious whether or not we should increase this.
It doesn't, the fees are borne on the developers and the contractors and the owners. It doesn't affect the town at all, raising the fees. I just think you have to look at the fees. I've heard, from last time when we upped the fees, that was a big jump, and it's going to affect Queensbury and Lake George, where they're building 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 square foot houses in a big way. You start contractors 10%. They're paying. What is it?
I think it's realistic to expect that this expense, which is really supporting new construction or remodeling or the like, not every taxpayer, right? That the expenses should be covered by whoever is using this service, and it's not a service that's provided across every taxpayer, is it not?
Right.
I would like us to look at what kind of increase you would need. Maybe you can come back to us next month with a proposal on fee changes, fee structure, to at least get us closer.
Yep, fire safety fees went from $25 per billing when the fee structure changed, and they added more fire safety help. They went up to $75 per business, and that was, and I can tell you from experience through that is still one of the biggest complaints we get from a business owner, is charging them $75 to inspect their business.
It's an annual?
Some businesses annual, some businesses every 3 years.
Let's cover our costs. Let's figure out what it's going to take to cover our costs. You're kind of throwing Town of Queensbury in there. I don't believe Town of Queensbury charges to do fire safety inspections at all.
But they have a person on staff.
There are fire inspections done by the Town of Queensbury. I'm just curious. What do we take to cover this based on the fees?
Okay.
And if it's not just the fire, I mean, the permitting alone, you said you had to pay $10?
50.
Oh, 50. I had to pay 90, all right? So, I'm thinking,
That's different, though.
And my town just drives around the town.
They do inspections.
You do inspections all around well, I mean, the inspections of also, you have to do footings inspections.
Yes.
We're talking about different things here.
Supervisor Simpson? Are we?
New construction, it's 12 cents a square foot.
15 cents for residential, 18 cents for business.
How's that compare to other, say, Queensbury and Glens Falls?
I would have to check their fee schedules. I think it's comparable, as it is. I think if you get into bigger areas...
Yeah, time to look at it, John.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we're under some areas, but I also know that if the further north we go, the more outlying you get, we're above. So.
There's a little traveling involved, too. Thank you, Charles.
Certainly take a look at how much, what fees would take to cover $300,000. Okay. So in regards to the rest of the line items, those were the biggest ones. Was the difference in contracts, and then the salary part-time savings. Everything else we were able to adjust between the contract number and a few other things to basically not raise the budget up at all, with the exception of all the 800 numbers.
And Charles, you just put out some budget reports, came out today. It looks like we're pretty much on schedule.
Yes, absolutely. I think that we won't have any issues, again, probably this year hitting the $200,000 mark in revenues. That seems to have been the trend. trying to stay conservative, again, going forward for next year. I'd rather be under and get a few $1,000s extra than I would be to over-project it and come short.
Any other questions on the budget? You have some new business that you want to take care of?
The second item is just the notice of intent to fill the vacant position. John did leave September 27th, and just looking for permission to go ahead and try to fill that position moving forward as a part-time.
Part-time. Motion bring that. Does that need to be moved? Yes. Garrity and Wild. Any discussion?
The only thing I want to say is, the department has moved so far ahead, and getting the contractors building and getting the buildings done. I appreciate what he's done, and getting the fire inspections caught up. They've done an excellent job. So.
I'll second that.
Yeah, you're a builder.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you, Charles.
Good job, Charles. Yeah, I try to do that.
Brian, thank you for waiting.
I try to do the exact same thing, cover my costs.
2 hours and 10 minutes.
I know, I'm sure it will be, but it's worth the exercise to understand the fee structure.
You're going to
Whatever
never
thing.
push
You know what I mean?
I remember what happened. You get a lot of pushback. I'm not giving you one, Mike, because you've been talking to one.
First notice that, Brian, it's the first time or what?
Well, we may want to
Thank
talk
you.
about mitigating some of the,
Well, that's right.
for instance, nonprofits that have gathering space.
500,000,
Yeah.
over 540,000, that our sales tax line goes for this wine. You know that? Bad enough. I want the same deal. I want the same deal.
Negotiate the meeting, but kind of, you came in after.
I'm surprised he didn't accuse you of stealing it.
But, you know,
Let him look. Just like Mr. B.
all I was trying to do is get the best for
I
you.
think Supervisor Simpson.
I steal his.
I actually tried to sit at the committee and I was, doing.
All right, Brian, what's your first request?
Ready?
Ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Request number one is for out-of-state travel for Amy to continue on with the training that is required for her to take to get us up to speed with the new federal requirements. She has taken it on herself to go to all these classes because very shortly we're going to be required to have someone on our staff that has all these classes and that has this certification. So.
Okay, moved by Supervisor Simpson, second by Supervisor Wild. Any further discussion?
Is that over Thanksgiving?
I'm sorry?
Is that over Thanksgiving?
November 25th?
That's the next,
Yeah,
that's after.
Thanksgiving
Oh, okay.
is early.
Thanksgiving's early.
Which wouldn't bother her either way, but...
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries.
Number two is just a request to transfer some dollars to clean up a bookkeeping scenario.
I'll move it.
Oh, okay. Who moved? Who said that? Yeah, Supervisor Garrity, second by Supervisor Simpson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, getting down to discussions, we have, as you know, we have to notify you of any travel requests that have been done. One was for me to attend the COMEL meeting in Oriskany, and the second one was for when Amy attended the Homeland Security Conference in New York.
How did it go?
Everything went well. We're good. The next one, just to notify you, Warren County has been recertified as a storm-ready community. That's done every 3 years. The National Weather Service comes and we go through a number of things, including our paperwork. The fact we have the right receiving equipment for the national and the local alerts for all that stuff, and the other agencies that we have that are part of our storm-ready community, i.e. the Great Escape, the schools, and a number of locations. So we did receive that certification again.
So we can put a banner out there that says, "Bring it on"?
If you look out front, you'll see a really nice sign that says we are a storm-ready community when you come in the front gate. Okay, on to the budget. Who needs a copy of the budget? Oh, boy.
Since you're holding out on us, Brian, expect a lot of questions, sir.
Well, you know me, I'm trying to be a paperless scenario.
Already printed.
Here, take one. Let me give one to Frank and Ron.
Thank you, yes.
Yes, please. I promised you, Frank.
You guys
over here somewhere.
We're still paying it?
Everybody good?
No, we didn't get one.
Oh, you need them.
Yay.
Everybody get one?
Did you want one?
Are there
It's not unreasonable to,
You're gonna be looking at that right away?
I could put my hands on it, I just press it off.
Let me
This-
Get it back here.
So you have several budgets here, Brian?
7.
Okay.
This is fairly easy. If you look on the back of the original paperwork I gave you for the agenda, you'll see a summary of any of the changes that are part of this budget. That's just kind of a way to give you a little heads up at what you're looking at. You'll see that our budget is very close to budget neutral, with the exception of, as you know, we moved the I am responding dollars from the sheriff's budget over to our budget. Does anyone have any questions?
We want to just go through one at a time here, like the 3410?
Sure. We have 3 major budgets. One is the civil defense, one is fire prevention and control, and the last one is EMS. The others are the training center, which is a very small budget, and the grants that we have, which basically are, they're all, there's no match involved in any of those. So those are the Homeland Security grants that we deal with on an annual basis. See any highlights here. In the fire prevention one on the second page, you'll see where we had 411, we had rent building and property. That cost has been eliminated because we are no longer storing our hazmat trailer at South Queensbury's Firehouse. That's down at the Murph building. So that's good there. The other things that you see under purchases, under comments, and each account number, as you look down through these, if you compare them, those are actually dollars that are in each year. We replace a couple cell phones each year, we upgrade some warning equipment, radios, and our regular Marine Rescue and Tech Rescue team equipment budgets. Those are there every year, so that's not a major change. If we go down the next page to 470, that's an interesting one. You'll see there's $25,000 listed there as a hazmat contract. That is a dollar amount that is required by the contract that we have with the City of Glens Falls Fire Department. It's never used. It's there in case they ask us for something, because in the contract we have with them, it says we will maintain a $25,000 kitty in case they need a piece of equipment or something that is our responsibility. We have to maintain that in the budget. Each year that money goes back into the general fund. We don't get to carry that over, so that money never gets spent anyhow. And below that is our cause and origin team dollar amount, and that varies depending on the calls that we've had.
Any questions on fire prevention and control?
Come back here.
Just as an aside, Mr. Chairman, at some point I would like to bring to this committee the ability to change that name, because the problem we have is we are continually confused with Charlie's department, which is fire codes. And every time, you know, the number of phone calls, they go back and forth, and people that come here and try to get a building permit from us, at some point in time I'd like to find a way to get around that, because people look in the directory and it's not clear enough.
Right.
That's an aside.
Any recommendations?
I think we ought to change it. I think he's correct. Let him change it. What do you want to name yourselves, Austin?
Let me think about that, but it's certainly, the fire prevention is,
Yeah, it is.
that's what raises hell with us, so.
That was done that way because it was dual leadership.
Well, originally, they were the same group.
Marv was here.
Yeah, when the fire coordinator's office was part of codes, or vice versa.
I agree, you should change the name. Get it
Okay.
properly.
I'll work on that, and bring it to another meeting. Civil defense, nothing major here. The same thing, the usual supplies that we get under equipment. We provide equipment to our amateur radio guys each year, a small stipend. We keep maintaining the equipment that we have in our communications truck and our other vehicles, and the replacement of a cell phone. We have found that by putting in $200 each year for each phone works very well. That's on state contract, and we don't seem to get more than 13, 14 months out of a phone. So we're not buying the $1,000 iPhone. Let's see.
Brian, on your salaries, you divide up between all your divisions here, your overall staffing salaries?
Yes, the deputy fire coordinators, the training center maintenance guy, myself, and the hazmat coordinator fall under fire. Amy and Jen fall under civil defense, and the EMS people fall under EMS. I don't see anything else in civil defense unless somebody has something that they would like to talk about.
Any questions under civil defense? Okay, hearing none. Fire training center.
Fire training center, we upgraded that a few dollars because, and this is a good thing, it's something that I'm very pleased with, the usage of our fire training center has gone up substantially. The more improvements that we make and the more that people get to use it, it's getting a lot of use, which is great. That's the important thing, that people are using it. Everything from fire and EMS people, the fire brigade from Comstock, from the Great Meadow. People like that, they are actually a Washington County Fire Department, but we're getting people using it that never did before, and we're very happy with that. That doesn't increase our costs very much, but it did go up a little bit, so that's the change there.
Any questions on fire training center?
The next one, the next one brings us to our FY18 Homeland Security Program grant. This is a grant we get each year, $60,000. Why they make it $59,983, I don't know. You saw Sean read off the one that he gets, which is the LEPT grant. It's an $80,000 grant. 20 goes to sheriff, 60 comes to us, and I'm not sure why it's got a wild number like that. But again, that's dollars in, dollars out. That's budget neutral as far as the county goes. But it does allow us to buy some equipment this year. I think I explained, maybe just at the budget meeting, we are purchasing a large 6-inch trailer-mounted pump and a trailer to carry all the equipment that goes with it. Right now, we used to always be able to go to the state and borrow a pump like that for a highway department that was doing a project, for a pump out, if we had somebody that was flooded, whatever. We used to be able to get that from the state. They don't allow that anymore. All those pumps are sitting there rotting over here on Fox Farm Road, but I'm not going there. They're all sitting there. We can't use them unless the governor does a state of emergency for this area. So the chances of that happening are pretty slim. So we're working with Soil and Water. Those guys were working together on this purchase, and we're going to be buying the equipment. They are probably going to be the ones tasked with maintaining it and operating it. They have a place to store it at their facility. They work with the highway guys all the time. We used to get requests constantly for a pump because they had to come through us to get it from the state, and we had to just keep saying no. And this has been something we've had on the burner for a while, and this year we have the dollars to do that. Any questions on that, Grant? Yes?
Is that something that maybe we as a county should write somebody in the state and say, look at how this does not make sense? Or wouldn't it do any good?
We tried all that when they first initiated this scenario with no, we don't loan out anything.
But
And
I mean, that's the coordinators trying to do it, but if it came from the county to the state saying, look at what you're doing, I mean,
Shared services.
it doesn't make sense. And then should we put a little pressure on somebody to
we
write a
can
letter?
try, this ruling all comes from the director or the commissioner of Homeland Security. Back when Jerry Howard was that, he instituted this, and each commissioner after that has kept it in place. We've asked. I'll get you, if your legislative committee or whoever wants to put together a letter, I'll get it to the right place.
I think we ought to ask the question, why? I think we have a right. I mean, with all the shared service, and especially when they're sitting down, I don't know how many down there.
I'll tell you, since Hurricane Sandy, at which point they spent close to $6 billion, a large portion went to equipment that they bought in a hurry. Hundreds and hundreds of generators, light towers, pumps, and all that stuff is sitting in 6 major storage areas around the state, and it's just sitting there.
Right, and if it doesn't get used, it gets...
That was the downside. We found every time we borrowed one from them, whoever borrowed it, usually a highway department, whoever, spent the first 8 hours trying to get it to run. And
It doesn't pay to have equipment sit like that.
very much so, I agree. Especially things like pumps.
Towers and pumps.
Supposedly there's someone that takes care of it, but there's so much equipment they have
I
now.
just think we ought to stop and write a letter and to get a response from the state.
Is that the state Homeland Security, or is that?
Yeah, state.
We know where it is.
Those are all state resources.
So Kevin, a letter from the Board of Supervisors?
Yes, correct. Yes, I make a motion, we send a letter to the state office of,
Okay.
Homeland Security.
Second by...
Just get a response, find out.
Okay.
Because we're going to spend $6,000 when 10 minutes away from here, there's probably 2 or 3 of those pumps sitting there.
Discussion.
Maybe they could loan us one.
Yeah, especially if they decentralize some of, like you're saying, Kevin, it really makes a lot of sense in case of a disaster, because then you have it on hand. Generators are a great example of that. If you have a couple of generators, then you can get them, you're close to where the problem is. Hurricanes are real classic examples of that. Afterwards, it's very difficult to communicate, more or less move equipment from centralized locations. So there's I understand the idea of centralizing, but there's also a sense of decentralizing something as well.
It's difficult, and there's nothing to say when you need it that they have them, that they haven't been sent to Manhattan or somewhere else. They take that equipment, they pre-stage it. If they think there's something coming, they seem to do that now with every big rainstorm. They bring everything down in New York City.
Brian, I get the emails from the governor's office when there's a storm coming in and a contact person. So I just think that we ought to send back and say, hey, maybe part of your system is falling down a little bit.
I agree.
Supervisor Bramer, then Supervisor Wild.
Yeah, thanks. I agree with asking, and why can't we borrow them when we need them and they're not being used somewhere else? So, but I'm not sure we need a resolution. Can we just have Ryan ask? Send out a...
There's a person.
Been there, done that, but I'd be glad to ask again.
No,
Well, I mean our administrator.
Oh,
Yeah, I just think we
Ryan.
need to put it right.
Supervisor Wild?
Brian.
Just an observation, though, Brian. This is Homeland Security equipment we're talking about that's, quote, rotting away. And Homeland Security is giving us money to buy our own.
Which is federal money.
Oh, this is federal.
This is something, I'll hit this really quick. All the time you're seeing press releases that come out. Governor Cuomo has now said, I'm going to give you the state's going to get $487 million for Homeland Security. That is not his money. That is FEMA money that is given to the state. They are the worker. They are the pass-through that gets it to the counties. It's not New York State money, but it sounds great for him. Whatever. He loves to make announcements like that.
All right. Well, let's make a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carried. Send a letter.
Got it. The next one is the LEMPG Homeland Security Grant. This is another one that we get. This is Local Emergency Planning. That's what that one stands for. And Those dollars are used to pay part of Amy's salary. So, again, why we have to take the training, and she has to do what she has to do. Otherwise, if she doesn't meet the requirements, then we can't use these dollars for her salary. The next one is the Hazmat Emergency Preparedness Grant. This is a grant that is given to each county each year. It normally runs about $6,000 to $7,000 because many counties don't want to deal with that, the paperwork and what's involved for $6,000 or $7,000. So what we have done is with our 7-county Hazmat Consortium, we have made the arrangements that all of those 7 counties, their $6,000 comes to us, and that's your $36,000 that you see there. And then we in turn do a project on behalf of the consortium. We just did a large exercise about 4 or 5 weeks ago now. We had all 7 counties bring their equipment into Washington County, and we set up and did an exercise. So that's what those dollars are. Again, that's money that comes in as a grant, and we spend it out that way. It's not part of the general fund. And the last one is going to be EMS. The normal things that are in EMS, with the exception of salary, and I'll hit on that in a second, are normal annual things that we have to purchase. The items for our AED program, and I'm sure you're aware, but my office maintains all the AEDs that belong to the county, within the county. We have to check those and replace the batteries and the pads and all those kinds of things. That is done through our office. The iron responding, if you look down at the bottom under 470, you'll see the iron responding dollar amount there. There's the 19.2, which will be the annual fee, and then there is a one-time setup fee, which is coming out of this year's budget, or 2019 budget. Other than that, most of the stuff for EMS, or all the stuff in EMS is the same. With the exception, I did ask the budget committee of the possibility of increasing the payroll, or the dollar amounts for our EMS coordinators. They asked me for a number. I suggested $1,000 per person, which would be $4,000. I don't know what the group's thoughts are on that. It appears to me that as we've been moving along with all the work with the coming up with the task force and those things, those folks are putting in a lot more hours than they're getting paid for, and I felt they needed an upgrade, so that's a suggestion on my part.
Any questions? For the discussion. And being involved with that task force, it's true the coordinators have been putting a lot of work into developing plans and data analysis for that task force. Supervisor Kramer?
Thanks. This last sheet, this is their salaries for all the individual departments combined.
Which sheet are you looking at?
With each person and their salaries.
Salary sheet.
Like you break them down into their whatever they do for the individual.
Yeah, they're done in
budget
each department.
code.
Yeah. The last.
This is their salary combined.
Yes. Well, I can't see your page you're on.
Right.
Yes. That's all the employees. We've been keeping the EMS coordinators and fire coordinators at a flat rate. Started out years ago at $5,000, and with the 2% increases we've been doing, that's how we get up to the number that they're at now, the 5,463. So the three deputy EMS coordinators and the 4 deputy fire, I'm reverse that, 3 deputy fire coordinators and 4 EMS coordinators generally are getting all the same amount. Our hazmat coordinator gets more.
That's Chief Schrammel.
Yes.
So they're under basically the part-timer type things, and that's what you want to increase the 1,000 on each one?
Yes, of the EMS coordinators.
Chairman?
Yeah, Brian, if you could, the building maintenance helper, Yes.
Why that's there, what that person does.
That person maintains our training center, including the plowing, and anytime anybody uses the site, he goes back in. He has to maintain the propane generator, which runs everything there. He gets the supplies for people to use, and that $5,000, $2,500 of that gets reimbursed to us from Washington County. Anything that you see in the training center budget, we're the fiduciary for the training center, but everything we do down there, we send them, their treasurer, a bill for half of it. So truly, we're paying $2,500 for that guy.
Supervisor Bramer, then Supervisor Hogan, and then
Go ahead.
Supervisor Wild.
My only comment is I'd support the $1,000 for those four.
Well, they're not even at minimum wage, or they won't be for next year if we don't give them.
They're only getting
I-
$5,000.
But you broke it out by the hour, right? That's the $10.50. Is it minimum wage 11 going to 11.10?
No, it has nothing to do with minimum wage.
Okay. So what is that number I'm looking at there?
I'm sorry, which one are you on?
The last page,
Yep.
very back, says
NA/1051.
1051,
Another one,
964. What does that mean?
I don't see that really.
The very last page, the very back.
That's what I thought it was hourly rates.
Yeah,
Mine
which,
doesn't say that.
Now, it's stipend.
You're on the last
It's the
page.
flat
Yeah, it
fee.
is.
Oh, the NA, I see where you're at, I'm sorry.
but what's that mean?
The problem with those numbers is, at least for Amy and I, obviously we're salary, so the dollar amount that they list means nothing.
Okay.
The
I'll
grant
ignore that.
administrator, same thing, they get a flat $20,000 a year. If you divide that out into however you want to call it, you can call it $18.91 per hour, but that's not really how it works out. Same thing with the deputies. They are on call 24/7, and they go to every call that they can, so I'm not sure how you break that out by hour.
Yeah, I'm in favor in increasing the coordinators, you know,
It goes to the budget.
our budget officer.
I would like to.
Oh, Supervisor Wild.
Mr. Chairman, thank
I
you.
can say I'm in support, he has the final say.
Right.
Brian?
Well,
Yes,
we
sir.
have the final say.
Next to the last page, the sheet right before you start getting into the salary schedule. I'm looking at this and I'm a little confused on the totals. It looks like 4022 is costing the county $496,000 in change a year.
Or is that for all the budgets combined? Because
4022, it looks like the way I'm seeing it.
Yeah, 68,000 is in one line there.
Then I don't
Yeah,
understand this.
4022 EMS totals have 68,000, then expense totals altogether of 629. But when you look through the 4022, there's not that many in expenses, right? Is that
Well,
what
you gotta
you're-
take the revenue out. 629 minus the revenue gives you the 496.
Jamie, can you-
I think what probably happened is when the reports were run, they were run with all the departments together, like selected all the departments, so the totals that you see on the bottom are probably for all the departments that.
That's
ran.
correct.
It's not just for EMS, it's EMS and Homeland Security and.
Yeah, if you look,
All 5 or 7 of Brian's
shows
departments,
emergency
those
medical
are the totals.
expense totals, and then it goes down under general. So under general, there's where you have the other numbers, and that's where that grand total comes from.
Sorry.
So the Department 422, Emergency Medical Services totals is correct when you look at the summary page
Right.
before, but then the expense totals, that comes right underneath it, that would be for all of the other budget codes, account codes.
Correct.
Combined, the 629,000.
So Office Emergency Services is a $500,000 hit to the county every year.
Right.
But 4022 is just the 68,000 minus,
59,000.
there is no revenue.
Well, there's,
Yes, because there's no revenues off of that, right?
the grant.
If you compare that with 2018, you'll see we're at
see, 6 plus 9, we're at $15,000 over, which is right about what the I am responding is, as far as an increase in our budget from last year.
Just to follow up, have we ever looked at different other counties, similar-sized counties, and see what their OES budgets are? Cost for the county? Just curious.
I can tell you Essex is 2.7 million.
What about other than Essex?
I don't have them in front of me, but I can get them for you.
I'm just curious, because it's my first exposure to this, right? So is $500,000 really good? Is $500,000 really high?
And is that Essex with the EMS in it? The ambulance?
Not the new EMS, that's the old, that doesn't even include the new EMS.
Perhaps this is something the administrator's office could also look at as
It's
well.
hard to compare them one for one, I'll be very honest with you, because some places pay their fire coordinator part-time, some pay him full-time, some have a full-time emergency manager, some have a part-time, some of them they don't pay their deputy coordinators at all, and some of them they pay them a stipend or mileage. It covers the whole gamut, so you just want to make sure you're covering, you're comparing apples to apples.
Supervisor Garrity.
I'm just curious, I thought we got some grants that made up some of these budgets. We get the $60,000 a year grant, and we get the $26,000 one, and then we get our $6,000 out of the $36,000 of the Hazmat grant. We used to get substantially more money. We used to get a grant each year that was $160,000 a year, and each year they cut it back, and now it's down to $60,000. So, yes, in answer to your question, we used to get a lot more in grants. Any other questions?
Well, with no other questions, we thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Department. And if there's no other discussion, call to adjourn.
I opened the damn...
Motion.
Okay, moved by Mike, second by Andrea. All those in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn. 4:05.
I'm trying to
Yeah,
distill out in my head